Okay, so here's a very rough sketch of my overall strategy. We've got 6 battery modules in series. This one is the pack most positive, and it goes through the other 6, and this becomes the pack most negative. These 3 modules are in the front box, and there is a pipe with a wire in it and a pipe with the wire in it. We got to figure out where to connect those. The overall goal is to connect the motor controller, the DC to DC, and the charger to the most positive and the most negative, because this is 144 volts here. Please feed the YouTube algorithm by giving the video a like. If you want to see more like this, click subscribe and ring the bell to be notified of new videos. If you want to chip in on my expenses, I now have Patreon and YouTube memberships. Interrupting the flow of electricity, both at the top and at the bottom, is the EVTV V2 controller. There's a contactor here that cuts off the most negative from those 3 things and cuts off the most positive to those 3 things. So when the V2 shuts itself off, there is no positive leaking out into the car, and there is no negative pack leaking out into the car. So what does that mean for an overall design? So I drew up a more formal design. The 3 modules here, the positive of this battery module, the one on the bottom of the pile, goes to the plus input of the V2. The plus output becomes our most positive terminal. We then do a bus bar, one of these beautiful orange bus bars from amprevolt.com from our friend Brandon. Goes minus to plus, next one minus to plus at the top of the stack. This one, the negative of this one, goes to the front battery pack, and those 3 modules can be, pretend you can put them right in here. The module comes back right here, goes to the negative contactor input, and through there becomes the battery most negative terminal. So the V2, the contactors in here completely interrupt any pack voltage from going to the rest of the car through the most positive and the most negative studs. Now, in addition to that, we've got the Tesla BMS data. And the way that's going to work is there's a connector that goes into the V2 right here on this side. The other end of that connector goes to battery module number 1, clicks in, battery module 2 clicks in, battery module 3 clicks in, and then there's the end of the wire that I cut, and I will splice that in with the wire that's coming from the front battery that I've already detailed before. So this should get us our entire pack voltage and BMS data, physical layout and electrical layout, and everything should be a happy puppy. But it's almost 7 p.m. on Saturday night. I'm starting to drag, so I'm going to get a good sleep, and I will start working on this tomorrow morning. Okay, the rear battery box is in place. Everything is as wired as I can make it. I've got the Tesla data coming from the front of the car. I've got power to the fan and the water pump going out. I've got the key switch interrupt going out. I've got the pop box signal going out. Everything in here powers up. The charger comes to life. The EV V2 box comes to life. And that's as far as I can test. I got to start putting batteries in now, and I need to commit to where I'm going to drill through here and bring wires up. As I was putting in the padding to lay in the first module, I came to a shocking realization. Before I can put the batteries in, I need to close this because I have almost 0 space. Before I close that, I have to land huge battery wires there and bolt them down, and then I can close that. But in order to do that, I need to put the wire in here and in here. The one here isn't going to be too bad because it will go to this module. I can estimate that and attach it. But the one here comes from the front battery pack. I've got to make a hole here and then get the wire into place. I gotta see if I can make that angle, or if I go here and then I come across into here. That could make more sense. It gives me more opportunity to be flexible with the placement of the wire. Maybe here is the best place. I need to stop and think about this. This is what you get when you have an extremely confined space. You just gotta think 7 times and figure out where you're going to make your compromises. Okay, I got the positive side of the contactor going to the first battery right here, and that is bolted down to the lug and tightened right there. Now I have to do the negative, and that is going to go right there because it's the minimum bending that I have to do for the cable to come up from underneath. And here's the thing, now I get to commit because the cable that comes up from here comes from the battery pack in the front, and I have very little leeway when I bring it up and I make the cut and I put the lug in. That's the deal. So I made a pilot hole. I'm going to check it out underneath. Then I'm going to lift the car up and measure the plus and minus of the cables coming the front, figure out which one is the one that's going to come through here, and then I'm going to go home and I'm going to have a good sleep and come back and actually pull that wire tomorrow. Okay, I was working with Ian and Zeke to confirm my plan of how to hook everything up, and Zeke pointed out that we should put the current sensor at the most negative part of the pack. I was going to put it up here, which is halfway through the pack on the 3 modules coming here. So what we agreed is that we were connected to the most negative terminal, comes out on a very short wire, connects through the current sensor, and then it will go down to the negative of the front battery box right there. That actually helps me out because it saves me making a hard left and a hard right turn into the box. And I can come up here with a 90 degree, and Bob's your mother's brother. Work that one out. Okay, I'm under the car. I cleaned up the hole and I put the gland nut in, and that is nice and happy in its final place. All we have to do is run a wire straight up and bolt onto that tab from the current sensor. But I got to get this wire through here, around here, and into there. And the first part of that is my clever plan to use this 45 degree bend with the detachable base. This will go on here like that, and then it will stick up into this very tight space with this spacer that threads onto this metal piece. Then this gland nut gets epoxied into the top of that, which allows me to put the gland nut on the top and a watertight seal as the cable is coming north. Then it will make its way around here, getting zip tied to some stuff for stability, and then up in the hole. So let's get this attached up into here. And against all odds, it's in. We got pipe, we've got safety protecting adapter, we've got a right angle, we've got screw-on adapter, and we've got gland nut, and we've got wire going up there. Right now it's held temporarily in place, but I'm gonna make a nice graceful curve for it and put it right up here. Wow, this is like a job of millimeters. Can you see how much space there is to work with right there? And it just goes not quite perfectly. I made a little bit too much of a bend here, but I had no idea this was the plan at the time. So I got a little angle going through here, but everything's happy. It's pretty, well, it's a little bit solid. I'll have to figure out a way to get that really held in place. I'll add maybe some sort of a bracket across here. Okay, we're very, very close to hooking up one end of the battery. All right, I made the commitment. I cut the wire short. Well, I left an extra foot on, of course. My mama didn't raise no dummies. And it's gonna go right there. I've got it zip tied into place. And I noticed right here at the top, there was a chance that it could be rubbing against some metal. So I used one of those conduit spacers. I'm not thrilled with it, but it's definitely protecting against 1, 2, 3 different pieces of metal. And it extends down far enough. I'll fill it up with silicone and it'll stay there and be a happy camper. Now we get to mark and measure up above and then wire it up onto the negative, into the current sensor. Okay, after cutting to final size, I pulled it back through, and underneath I stripped and crimped this 90-degree with a little bit of a bend in it, pushed it through, bolted it down, tightened up the gland nut. This is solid, and I measured from the negative terminal to the positive of the battery pack wire, which is down there. I'm getting 65.9 volts, and that is pretty amazing, because that means all of that wiring from the front back to here now works. So I can start putting the modules in, except while I have access, I'm going to drill 2 holes over here for the motor controller wires that are going to go from the most positive and most negative terminal, and they're going to go straight down while I have access, because I got millimeters to spare in this project. Everywhere, a millimeter. Okay, it's early the next afternoon, and I have done the gland nut for the positive coming back from or going to the front battery box, and also the gland nuts for the coolant pipe in and out. I vacuumed. I've got 2 screws holding the V2 lid on, and I think it's time to put the battery in. Which is kind of shocking. I can't believe I'm at this point. I'm gonna go watch some puppy videos and have a think, and then I'll come back. Well, the puppies brought a flash of clarity, and I realized I hadn't drilled the hole for this hole of the mounting bracket, or the hold down bracket. This one is fine. This one should be almost where this gland nut is, but so I had to shift it over about 3/4 of an inch, which means it's going to be at a very slight angle. But at this point, I don't care. That is the last hole, and as you can see, the first battery is in place. Module number 1 is now in and wired. This is the most positive terminal. It goes to the V2's most positive. The Tesla data cable is in place, and I managed to get the input on the cooling hose in here. This is really hard. This is the hose I got is incredibly stiff, so it doesn't like going over this little nub right here. It slides on fine, doesn't like the nub. I cannot shove it over the nub, so I had to have a system. What I do is I stick this drill bit in the end of the hose, and then I heat it up with a heat gun, and that's just enough to get it to slide over, and then I attach the steel screw clamp. All right, let's do that 2 more times. Oh, and I forgot, in preparation, I need to attach the sweet bus bar to this end from amprevolt.com, and I added the next section of hose pipe to that one using the same technique. It actually worked really well this time. All right, number 2. And that's module 2 in, first with a layer of foam and then the layer of mica sheet insulation. Laid it in place, bolted this one into the top of the bus bar, added this bus bar to go to the next one, and did the piping on that end. Everything is coming along very nicely now after months of preparation. Okay, number 3, and module number 3 is in, bolted in. This is the most positive, which will pick up the wire from the front of the car up like this and over here. The Tesla data is connected to all 3, which goes around and into the V2 box. The plumbing is connected between them, except for the one on the end, which will go down to the pump and cooling system. So, months and months of work has gotten us to this place with, as you can see, millimeters to spare. I mean, I kind of drew this out and it looked okay, but I had no idea that I would have a finger's worth here and, you know, almost nothing here kind of situation. Now, the next step is to bring that other wire from the underneath tube up here and land it on here. That means it'll go battery 1, 2, 3 to the front, 4, 5, 6, and come back to the most negative terminal right there. Then I can measure the voltage from here to there, and it should be about 130 volts and a buttload of amps. But we're not going to have a buttload of amps flowing until I want to turn the motor. All right, I added the fitting on this end. Everything is now tightly bolted, not so tightly bolted in place, loose screw, but this is really super solid. This is pretty solid. It's zip tied up here, comes around here, mates up with the other cable, and goes north. I'm going to do the rest of the work upstairs. All right, here's the end of that cable, bolted in place in the pack, and I have a connected battery pack. Then I went to the front, flicked the giant DC breaker, no fire, no flames, no smoke, no nothing, and I put the voltmeter on it, and we got 132 volts. We have a working battery pack, and I am just so relieved at this step of the process. I'm just thrilled that it actually has a working battery pack. And this is a very auspicious moment because in about an hour and a half, Tesla's doing the Cybertruck reveal event. So I think I'm going to take a break and relax and watch that and have some good food and hang out with all the folks here as we enjoy the launch of the Cybertruck. Okay, working battery pack means this phase of the sub-projects is wrapped up. Just before we wrap up, I want to thank my Patreons, Peter Bouvier and Puppy, for their support. We also just popped over 2,000 subscribers, which is quite a nice milestone for my little channel. All support is greatly appreciated. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if so, please give it a thumbs up. I see that 81% of the viewers aren't subscribed. Please do, as it does help the YouTube algorithm. Take care and see you next time.